Welcome to the Modern CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping accounting firms achieve success. If you're an accounting firm owner who wants to learn how to provide virtual CFO services, then this podcast is for you.
Hello, and welcome to today's podcast. Today, we're going to do something kind of unique, but we hope to continue going on in the future. We're going to start bringing in guests from some of our favorite tools so we can really talk through how the tool works and really give recommendations. And so today, Adam and I are joined by David Cristello, who's the founder and CEO of JetPack Workflow. And just to throw it out there, he's also an excellent podcast host. So he may start throwing questions back at us and turn this around on us because I've listened to his podcast for a long time and know he's really good at it. So he is comfortable on air in these type of conversations. But so thanks for joining the show, David. And I'd like for you to start off by telling us a little bit of your background and also how you started JetPack.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. And you just reminded me that I need to have you on as a guest. So we had a really popular episode with Jody, and maybe you can be a future one as well. So I'll just commit publicly for you to come on our show. But, my background is, spent a number of years being a marketing consultant, more or less, and started to become very passionate about what were the blockers stopping people from doing their best work. I started interviewing specifically accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, and tax firm owners on the biggest blockers that was stopping them, what was keeping them up at night, what was stopping them from getting new clients or bringing on new team members with confidence. And this whole problem of checklist management, of having different lists in different places and people doing things slightly different from each other kept coming up. And actually a little known secret about JetPack Workflow is that the first version of the app, so in our code base today, it's called Checklist Pro. And that's only because I heard checklist so much, we just had to think of a name last minute and say, okay, we'll just call it Checklist Pro for now. So in some parts of our code base, it's still called that. But anyways, that's really the origin for us is we saw that accounting firms primarily were, trying to standardize the set of services they took on. And, CRM tools are really built for salespeople. Project management tools are really built for a defined sprint of work, like a website project. But there's a really big gap in what we sometimes call recurring client management. How do you house all the client information in one place, but still have a level of job management or project management associated with all those clients?
Great. So obviously you tailored it for accountants. So how early on did you hire an accountant, and did you have some bookkeepers helping you with what it takes to build it?
Yeah. So we created a founding members program. It's a little bit different than maybe a beta group. So we actually had 10 firms pre-purchase the product before we started building it, because I just thought, well, you're going to get the best feedback if people actually put the money down and pre-purchased it, and then they will be very clear on what's required for them to purchase it and continue to purchase it moving forward. So we had 10 firms come on board really early on. And you mentioned the podcast. I mean, we got into podcasting very early on. It's because I wanted to keep interviewing the market on what were the pain points and the trends that's going on, and so we can incorporate that back into the product. So we had our initial 10, but it's just built in our DNA to always go out and re-interview the market, see what's changed, see what's still relevant.
Awesome. I think that's definitely the way to do it. And like I said, I think it's kind of cool that it's tailored specifically for accountants. And I started listening to your podcast a long time ago, even before I was at Summit. I was listening to your podcast, trying to figure out how other accounting firms were doing it. So it's been a long time.
Here it comes. Here's like just kissing up. I'll tell you, I'm the one that actually found you. So we've struggled with that a lot. Exactly what you said. I mean, checklists, fatigue, really. Mm-hmm. I was one of those people that would, whenever you get your tax checklist or whatever, you check the first box and then you just drag the line all the way through the rest of it. And so even whenever you try to find like online tools and things of that nature, it was really difficult for us. And I think what was most appealing whenever we were looking at JetPack and what we were trying to find was really, we were looking for a wiki, if you will, that we could operationalize. So we wanted to make sure that we were building out our processes, documenting them so that people could go on vacation, they could switch tasks, they could do all those kind of things, knowing that sometimes even in some of the process workflow, we might not always use that because, again, once you get used to a process, you're going to, you want to document out the 10 different steps, but you might be able to skip through. And I really like our ability to go in and task out all of the jobs, but then to be able to clear things at the job level once somebody gets going and used to the process. And then if there's ever a break in the process, we can go back, look at the tasks. Whenever we want to shift things to another team member, we're able to do that. So I think that was really what was super helpful to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you bring up such a good point in that different firms have different level of sophistication in terms of what the team knows how to do. So you might have a tenured team member that really doesn't need to look at every single task to complete it, but you need to have it documented because that's how you scale when you're bringing on new team members. One of the biggest traps we saw in firms as they were kind of growing is they had so much institutional knowledge, and maybe their first hires were very tenured or seniored people. And as they started hiring more and more, I guess, team members, they probably maybe skewed towards a little bit less experience than the early hires. And if you're not documenting those steps in a proper way, they're going to skip over. There's going to be quality control issues. There's going to be training issues. There's going to be not auditing from an accounting standpoint, but from a management standpoint, auditing challenges to know what people are missing or getting stuck on. I think it's a phenomenal point. When you build out a checklist, you want to kind of build it to the lowest denominator possible, the person that has the least kind of experience. And that's how you can create a structure where you can bring in new team members very quickly if need be, or contractors or interns or whoever it may be.
Yeah. And then we were able to do a lot with templates. I mean, Jamie was the mastermind of all that stuff, but we have 4 or 5 tasks that we do globally for most of our clients. He was able to really make sure everybody on the team was doing the same process the same way quickly by building out templates and then dragging it across the team and kind of teaching them all at once how to make sure that they were doing all the steps. And we learned a lot about the process doing that as well, because whenever he's like, okay, here's the 8 little steps to do this process, people are like, well, what about this? And what about that? And we were able to build a more comprehensive, kind of choose your own adventure kind of a thing within those tasks, which was super helpful as well. Just going through that process.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't know if we want to get, hyper into the features, but, the way we look at it is you want to set up your steps. We call them tasks in the system. And you want it to be high level enough so, people can conceptually understand what they're supposed to do. You can always create or attach documents to a task or open up a task description and add subtasks, add notes. So this is kind of how you are able to thread the needle of creating a path for your tenured folks where they can just kind of move through the process very seamlessly. But if you need somebody that has a little bit more hand-holding, or they need to remember how to work through a certain system or tool or talk to a client, sometimes, call scripts will be attached to a task. You can attach the reference documentation, put things in the description. I'm also just conceptually a fan of start simple. Start with 5 steps or 8 steps. You can always go to 100 later and put more stuff in the reference material than building out these really elaborate templates. Of course, that's dependent on the firm. If you're a firm that already has well-documented steps and you just want to bring that into the cloud and in a more collaborative manner, then by all means, great. We just see a lot of firms kind of take their first step at trying to get organized and standardized, and they want to overdo it. So it's always easier to start with less and add more later.
It's a rabbit hole for sure. I mean, I think we've always ran into issues with that as well. And so, but that's why I think Jamie, the videos really help us out, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's, to Adam's point, like, we've always been a big firm around eMyth, and especially eMyth, the accounting version. And I think, when I introduced JetPack to the team, I told the story. And if you haven't read eMyth, any of our listeners, I would definitely read it. But there's always the story in there about the hotel, where he goes to the hotel and has this great experience. And one of the main reasons they have the experience is because they have the binder that tells them what to do with every new customer, how to handle every situation. And we didn't have the binder at Summit. We had a lot of cool things we did, and we were doing a lot of great things, but we didn't have the binder. And so JetPack is pretty much our binder. Our JetPack tells us how to handle each client, how to handle each situation, and how to handle our recurring tasks over and over again. So, but to Adam's point, one of the big things about having a binder on the cloud or out there that we can have access to is the videos. So we don't just have written instructions. In all of our tasks, we have little quick 5, 6, 7-minute videos that walk us through the task and say, well, first you log into this database and you pull this report, and this is what the report's going to look like, and you delete these fields. And we actually have the video with the more detailed instructions, because when you do get someone new on an account, or if someone's doing it for the first time because someone's out sick, the instructions are very detailed if they need them. So we even take it down to one other level, which has been very helpful for us.
Yeah, it just makes me think of that point. Sometimes you need to slow down to speed up. And, I don't know when this episode's going live, but obviously we're going through not only COVID-19, but, all kinds of turmoil in the markets. And I think there's a real push to try to go and run with everything and just throw, stuff at the wall, to put it mildly. But, there's also something to be said is, take a step back, take a deep breath, try to document the important things that are going on in your firm as a way to set yourself up to be more consistent, more predictable in a world in which, we're becoming highly uncertain. To have the certainty in those templates, I think, is really important. So again, it's just the way you guys are talking about it. It's you clearly have the mindset where let's slow down a little bit. Let's shoot the videos. Let's document everything. Let's make sure we have a layer of consistency and quality. So as we continue to grow, that maintains, right? And you've probably been able to skip over a growth ceiling because you've done that.
It's definitely helped.
Yeah, definitely. It's helped us grow, and it's helped us add clients quicker and all that good stuff. So, I think definitely JetPack has been very beneficial to us. But, we didn't add JetPack until we were at about 40 employees. Adam, does that sound about right? And so I'm curious to you, David, when do people usually migrate into JetPack, and what is your average size firm, and kind of what's that tipping point?
Yeah, so there's kind of two buckets people come to JetPack Workflow in. I think the ones that come to us, and we call them Jerry's. Get organized, Jerry, or Jerry Gist. Get your stuff together. They come to us because they need to get organized, and that tends to be at a smaller scale firm. Now, believe me, I've talked with a 20-person firm, and they're like, now's the time we need to get our stuff together. And I'm like, that's amazing. You got to 20 and you don't have anything together. That's really impressive, I guess is a way to put it. But they typically skew towards the smaller end. And it's typically, that owner who came out as an exceptional practitioner, started their firm, delivering great client work, and all of a sudden they realized everything's in their head or everything's in a spreadsheet, and the one or two admin assistants they've hired can no longer scale. Not everybody can just follow them around physically or digitally to figure things out. So that kind of customer definitely skews towards the smaller end, although again, we've had larger firms come in from the we just need to get organized perspective. And we certainly excel in the get organized. That's kind of the early problem that we built around. The next one is kind of the manage my team bucket. Not surprisingly, skews to a slightly larger firm. I think the typical range for us is anywhere from like 3 to 20, 3 to 30 employees. We have some that have hundreds of employees inside of JetPack Workflow, and we have many that's just 1 and 2. It's just themselves for the entire firm, or they might have an assistant. But the manage my team, and we call this buyer persona, manage my team, Mary, they typically come to us and they have a challenge of managing the team. So they got organized. It allowed the firm to breathe again, to go out and get more clients. Well, you get more clients, you have to go out and have to hire a team member or team members. So management becomes a lot harder. And this is typically where a practitioner who's doing everything early on starts to become more of a manager, right? And then there's a third one I talk about is, moving into CEO. It's very E-Myth related, but managing my team becomes a really big deal. So we kind of come in with that angle. And then also scaling the client experience becomes a really big challenge. Early on, Jerry will do everything he possibly can to help out any client in any way possible, which is somewhat viable when you have a smaller client base. But again, once you get organized, your client base grows, and you just can't take every client call at every minute of the day and chase down and go above and beyond. So you really start to feel the pain of a scalable, consistent client experience, and then trying to figure out what your team is doing. So I'd say those are the primary buckets of pain that we solve. And the manage my team bucket definitely skews a little bit higher. The getting organized definitely skews lower. But like I said, we've had firms that are small and they've already organized, and they're worried about managing their team. And same with get organized. We've had large firms that still hadn't gotten organized, but for whatever reason they were able to reach a head count that was quite impressive without having any real systems in place.
So generally smaller is where they start, is what you're saying? Like just in general
Adam,
terms?
That's a good way to summarize it.
So get with you early so you can scale is what what I heard. We were probably an exception, and we did a lot. We tried to do, I think like a lot of people, we just tried to do it on our own, and we just needed a tool.
Yeah, and the nature of your organizational chart, shows me that you clearly had thought about the problem. You clearly set up measures to try and resolve the problem. I don't think it's nearly impossible in my mind for Summit to have been as successful as you guys were when you had first started without having thought deeply about the workflow challenges you were experiencing.
Yeah, and we use tools like Trello. I don't know if you're familiar with that and all, but
Yep.
and the team really loved it. The problem is the inconsistency. Somebody trying to walk into somebody else's Trello board, or Jamie coming and saying, "Hey, I'm trying to manage this process or this thing," and it's just everything's unique. So that's why we really needed to bring something together that would kind of unify things. So we definitely kind of limped along for a while.
It's interesting. You're the second firm that we had talked with, and there's another firm Owen I was talking with the other day, and he had reached, I think, about 32, 34 people inside of Trello. I think because Trello, if you have a good methodology, if you have a good discipline as a firm, it's so flexible. I think it can help you scale up. But it's so interesting that you both use the same tool, about the same size, where you really started to move into something like JetPack Workflow. But to your point earlier, we typically start working with firms a little bit earlier in the headcount perspective.
Yeah.
Trello definitely helped us with the organization part. So when we were early on, it helped us get organized. It helped us make sure that things were getting done, which is obviously very important. But to Adam's point, when I was moved into this director role, like I would jump into different clients, and it took me 40 minutes to figure out what we're doing on that client that was different than we're doing on another client, because Trello was so adaptable. Like you could do too much in there, where it was just like we were delivering a different product to each of our clients. And that's kind of where we moved to JetPack, is more for the standardization standpoint of like, okay, we're taking on 4 new clients this month. I want to make sure that every CFO is not doing something completely different and spending too much time recreating the wheel, versus, hey, here's some templates you can use. Here's the product we deliver. Here's what you do each week. And really what this podcast is about is trying to talk about those practices and what we do there. So that's exactly what we brought JetPack for, was for the standardization purposes.
Yeah, and look, I don't know the answer to this, so I don't mean to be leading you guys in any kind of way possible, and maybe it's nothing, whatever. But with standardization, have you seen a profit increase, a margin increase? Have you seen kind of like a tangible ROI output of using the tool?
Yeah, definitely.
We measure gross profit, so that directly is related to efficiency, and so I attribute that to really everything Jamie's been doing for us over the last year, while he's been in that role. But JetPack has been a big part of what he's been doing, which is standardization of our process and everything. So we've definitely seen the ROI and are continuing to. So I think as we grow, we're going to be able to even take more advantage of that. So
I think even more versus the profitability, I think what we've seen is it is easier to grow. Like before, we were always trying to find that unicorn when trying to hire a CFO. It was like, okay, we need someone that can pick the stuff up really quick and do exactly what Adam does. And to be honest, no one can do exactly what Adam does. It's very hard to do. So we were trying to find these unicorns out there, and it was very difficult. So now the process is standard. It's much easier to hire. And we can say, hey, what our CFOs do is exactly this. I can walk you through 3 clients. They're exactly the same. This is what we meet. This is what we're trying to do. And this is what we try to deliver. So it makes it so we don't have to find those unicorns. So it's going to really, really, really help our scaling, which is the hope.
But it's all the way through the organization. It's our accountant, it's our senior
Right.
accountant, our CFO. Yeah. One of the biggest things I think, David, that like hit me was whenever we had a bunch of new hires and we had some people transitioning off the team, and the new people said, without a doubt, night and day difference onboarding the team member was a complete difference between people that had set up their JetPack before they had left and other clients where there was no JetPack. They just felt like they were flying blind. They didn't know what to do, where to go, anything. And they just felt like it was a totally different on-ramp whenever they had JetPack fully implemented for a client. So that made our decision right there, because that was very early on. We'd only had a few. We just started rolling it out to a couple clients, and we were just like, okay, we need to press the gas here and make sure all of our clients are set up as fast as possible.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the marketer in me wants to keep pressing you on specific ROI, but maybe I'll get to that after the call.
Maybe on your podcast.
Yeah, right.
I think we moved the needle. What was it? I'll give you some numbers. I think we moved our GP percentage up like 4 points over last year. That's pretty. That's pretty significant. I mean, 4 points over 1 year. We still want to move it up about another 4 or 5, and I think we're pretty confident that we'll get there. So it's been a big. That's a pretty fast ramp. I mean, to move the needle 4 points on GP.
Yeah, especially at your size, and especially at how thoughtful you all had been from a discipline and process perspective. That's amazing. Jamie, you brought up such a good point I wanted to touch on for a second, is that if you're an exceptional CFO or exceptional at any specific craft, if you're an exceptional marketer, salesperson, CFO, whatever it may be, the skill set that allows you to be exceptional at that usually doesn't translate well to being exceptional at building out the playbook to scale it up. And look, Adam, maybe you are, maybe you're not.
Nope.
I'm not sure, but it makes it's like this is the reason Michael Phelps is not a swim coach, and he's probably would be a horrible swim coach because he just knows how to do it. He's unconsciously competent. I mean, he just excels and he's in his zone. And if somebody asked him, "Hey, what are you doing to be such an exceptional athlete?" He probably couldn't tell you. Yeah, he'll say, "Yeah, I work hard and I do the blah blah blah," all the normal stuff, but he can't go back and deconstruct all the individual things that he's developed from a muscle memory perspective. And so I think for a lot of people listening, I think if you're in that role and you're exceptional at something, maybe having a team member that's not you, having a team member outside of you run with setting up a process is really important, because you're probably not great at developing out that playbook because it's all muscle memory to you at that point.
We must have talked like about a year or two ago whenever we decided to move Jamie in the direction of the director role, because that was pretty much the conversation between Jody and I. It's like, I'm not good at this. He's not good at this. We need somebody that is. And Jamie definitely had both the accounting acumen and obviously the process and the drive. So yeah, it's worked out well. I agree.
It's I've had to go through this personally with, so I have a little bit of a marketing background, right? Building out the marketing playbook was hard, but being a founder, being an owner, like you guys, you just think, well, I can figure it out. I can read enough books and I can take enough courses and I can talk with enough coaches and mentors and probably figure it out. And it's just like, it just doesn't work well. No matter how stubborn we want to be that we can somehow magically build out this new muscle is very, very challenging. So I would just, challenge a lot of people listening. If you find yourself to be kind of this exceptional athlete in whatever kind of area you're in, look outside of yourself, look at the team that you have, and there's probably somebody there that has a superpower that is so complementary to you that they can start building out this playbook. Because you're right, if you have to go out and hire a unicorn every single time for a CFO role, it's nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible. I mean, it is so challenging, right? So
yep, sure.
I just wanted to rest on that point, because I think many owners probably fall in that bucket where they just think, well, I can build it out. I can build it out.
Yeah,
probably can't.
No, that was our problem. We did that for many years, and I think that realization kind of came to a head with getting Jamie in there and him doing the JetPack, having a champion to really promote the cause. I mean, people make fun of Jamie all the time at work. They call him JetPack Jamie because and we talked about it. I mean, I harassed him on a regular basis. I said, hey man, when you pull into somebody's office, ask them where their JetPack is. Ask them why it's not open. Tell them to prove it, show it to you, before you leave, do the same thing, that kind of thing. So yeah, now Jamie's name is synonymous with JetPack. So,
and that's such a good point on how you treat the investment in the tool. And obviously, we're a fan of JetPack, but this is any tool that you take on, that it has to be something that you continue to think about, so you make sure you get the ROI out of it. I was on an interview the other day, and somebody was talking about, are you doing enough to maximize your current tech stack? And again, the first question might be, well, who owns it, right? Maybe that's not clear. Sometimes I do it, and sometimes you do it, and sometimes they do it. No, who is the owner, and what can we do to help empower them to run with it?
Yeah, no, it's definitely that. And to Adam's point, like when we started JetPack, that's exactly the pep talk that Adam and I had. He's like, hey, if this is going to work, you have to be the champion of it. And I think that's, they do call me JetPack Jamie. And every time I mention JetPack, you can hear people laughing in the background, even though it's pretty much every meeting I'm in. So all I need is my JetPack shirt to be wearing, and then I'd really be,
where's that swag at?
Where's my swag?
I'm really embarrassed we haven't sent you stuff.
Yeah.
And as long as our office is not quarantined with tarps all over it, in the near future we'll have to send some stuff your way. That's amazing. I didn't know they called you JetPack Jamie.
Yeah, JetPack Jamie.
Yeah, we've got a team retreat coming up. I think if you could douse him in some swag, I think it'd be pretty well received. The team will get a kick out of that.
When's the retreat?
It's in the first week of May. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Hopefully, yeah.
All right. So we'll try to get it sent out, because I mean, look, we look at software tools. Generally speaking, I'm sure there's more nuances to it. That you have your source of action, we have your source of record. And I think a lot of firms index into the source of action. Well, we need to be experts at QuickBooks Online, where we actually do the accounting work, or we need to be experts in Lacert or Drake, where we do, tax returns. A lot of focus on source of action expertise and ownership, and not a lot of expertise and ownership on the source of record. Both are critically important. And I don't, look, I'm not saying, oh, woe is us, right? But I don't think the source of record gets enough attention. And I know, look, internally to kind of, peel back the curtains, like when we first try to adopt a tool to be the single place to manage sales and marketing conversations and pipe all of our data through, which was Salesforce, so that we're about to leave it for HubSpot, we kind of didn't treat it as seriously as we needed to. And as soon as we started assigning an owner who thought about it every single day, it got significantly better. And we just started building that. We built that obsession over everything being in that tool from a sales and marketing standpoint. Like it wasn't allowed to sit elsewhere. And we used to say, if it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. And if you have a sales team, we'd say, look, if your deals aren't in Salesforce, you're not getting paid. Okay, well, that solves that problem. Not everything's in Salesforce right away. Yeah, so if you're adopting a source of record, you're using JetPack Workflow, it just needs to, the phrase we adopted internally for other tools we've used in the past, if it doesn't exist in this, it doesn't exist at all. But anyways, I thought you guys did an exceptional job, obviously, being really serious about it and having ownership and having a specific owner about it. And I would just say for the smaller firms that are listening, again, it doesn't always have to be the owner that is the owner of JetPack Workflow. Again, most times it's actually better if it's not the owner. Because they're probably getting it. In some cases, people adopt JetPack Workflow because the team keeps asking the owner for a tool like this. The owner finds like, oh, okay, I'll buy it and I'll make everybody feel good and we'll buy this tool. And the owners thinks, oh, check marks the box. I bought the tool, everything's solved. And then they realize they have to own the tool and monitor the tool. And that's obviously something, look, if they didn't want to build the playbook and now they have to build a playbook and monitor the tool, now they're doing two things they don't like to do, which as an owner is, they're kind of speak on my behalf. If you don't want to do something, you tend to shy away from it. So assign somebody else as the owner if that's not your sweet spot.
Yeah, that was our biggest fear going into JetPack was we'd have 1,000 overdue jobs before like a weekend, and then we'd never catch up. So that's something else we monitor over every week.
Yeah.
It's one of our goals to have that number as low as possible, and we talk about in every one of our meetings. In fact, recently we take the first 5-10 minutes of our accounting meeting to just actually clean it up. We say, okay, we're gonna take 5-10 minutes here. I'm gonna play Jeopardy music, and you guys have to get this number as low as we can, and try to get that JetPack. And again, I don't want people fibbing and closing stuff that's not actually closed, but I either want them extending it or I want them closing it because they did it, because I want that number to be as low as possible because that's really important to us.
So how often do you run that meeting, and what kind of percentage, what are some of your targets for that meeting? I think it'd be because not a lot of people do that meeting, by the way. So I think that's been foundational for your success inside of the tool. So unpack that meeting cadence and what you go through and what's the agenda.
Yeah, so we meet with our senior accountants every Monday morning. So it's once a week. And again, the meeting has a lot of goals to it. So we have 6 or 7 goals we track, but one of those goals is overdue JetPack jobs. And there was a while there where we were running around 600-700 for a firm of overdue jobs. And I'd say since we started doing that Jeopardy music part of the meeting, we've been down to about 150 at the end of each meeting. And usually it's CFOs. Our marketing team also uses JetPack, and they have quite a few overdue jobs in there. But our accounting team, since we started that, is usually just that team alone is probably down to 10 to 20 overdue jobs by the time that meeting's over.
I love it. It's just, oh, man, I love that meeting. Jamie, we have to send you more stuff. This is warming my heart. I can't wait to send this interview to the team. But look, it's if you're switching tools, you're kind of changing the nervous system of your firm. You're the operating system of your firm. You're building a new muscle. And so when you're talking about those meetings and cleaning them up, you're just reinforcing that muscle, that discipline every single week. And you get to have some fun with it. It's Jeopardy. I don't know if you dress up like Alex Trebek or not. Maybe you should. It's a suggestion for future meetings. Maybe the Halloween themed meeting. But I think it's important, right? If this system's important to you, run it on a weekly meeting, check it, clean it up. I think what a lot of people do is they fear that things are become unyieldy, and then they kind of throw their hands up it didn't work out. It's 99% of things are not perfect the first time you go through it, but how do you continue to monitor it and optimize it and iterate on it? And so that's why I wanted to unpack that meeting. And by the way, how long does the meeting last and how many people are in there?
Yeah, so we have 15 people in there, and it lasts about an hour. Again, we do more than just that. So there's a lot of other goals we go through. We do around the room. There's a lot of things we do in that meeting. But again, it's about an hour long total.
But the intent is to teach them how to do it before they get to the meeting. So instead of sitting
100%.
there for 10 or 15 minutes to get to other stuff that we need to get to, when Jamie and I were talking, it's like, hey, the goal should be 0. At the end of the day, you either did the job or you didn't do the job. And if you didn't do the job, it shouldn't be past due at this point. You're resetting your expectations for the week. You just need to plug it sometime in this week or next week. There's some tax related things that kind of are out of bounds that kind of hit us up a little bit, but it really should be 0. Like, reset the boundaries, set it to this week or next week when you're going to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll relay this because, the interesting thing is every company's in 3 businesses, whether they realize that not every business is a media business, a service business, and a technology business. Most of the time, one of those is your primary, but you still have to be good at those other 2. So like in, service business, obviously on your end, and you guys do media, and you're exceptional at technology, and we're a technology company, but we also have to figure out service and media. So our service component is we run, weekly sales meetings. And for the sales team, we run a very similar cadence, right? What was the last touch on the activity? Do you have a next step defined? And clear it out, clear it out, clear it out. What did you do? For the same reason, to try and reinforce that behavior of going in and updating the system.
Great. So we're actually getting pretty close on time here. I do want to ask one more question, but I'm only going to give you a couple minutes to answer it. But before I do that, I'm going to throw our email address out there. So for our listeners, we want this podcast to really meet your needs. So if you have any questions, please email us at cpa@summitcpa.net. Again, cpa@summitcpa.net. So SUMMIT CPA.net. Again, if you want to be a guest or if you have any ideas for the show, please email that account. So David, my last question for you. So we do have, obviously we're in JetPack. We see the updates. We know you're always working on stuff. I am curious on what's the next stage for JetPack Workflow? What's the stuff you're working on in the future here?
Yeah, so look, I'll tell you something that's in motion right now. This is kind of the safest thing to talk about in the world of technology is what's already kind of been started, kicked off, and we're halfway through the cycle. We run these 6-week cycles where something new gets released something substantial gets released every 6 weeks. What we're working on now, and then depending on when you do know when this episode is going to go live, by the way?
It's usually a couple weeks. Yeah, so a couple weeks from now, yeah.
So look, we're working on Zapier. So that's going to connect JetPack Workflow to about 2,000 different applications to pipe information in and out of JetPack Workflow however you need to solve some of your workflow challenges that sit outside of the tool. I will say beyond that, things we've been researching a lot, probably won't get into specifics as much, even though I really want to, is things around team. I mean, it's a very broad term, but around team management. I think there is a real challenge on understanding the schedules and capacity and utilization of the team. And another area I'm researching a lot is really that client experience and how a firm interacts with the client and how the client gets updates on what's going on, how the client sees potentially other services, tracking client communications. These are all things that I'm thinking a lot about that are really big problems for a lot of firms that we have today. So those are kind of just, things that we're kind of in the early stages of defining and scoping out or shaping, as we call it internally. But, Zapier, yes, by the time this is out, it's going to be pretty darn close to being finished unless something insane has happened, which shouldn't happen.
Awesome. Well, I do have to tell you, I know you guys are changing a lot, but one of the things that happened when we first did your trial, one of the things we loved was the embedded videos. So that was, we talked about the videos and how that was super important to us. And it was crazy. We loved the embedded videos. And then with like 2 weeks out of our trial, like those disappeared. So if you ever can bring those back, we here at Summit would love it because that was one of the reasons we signed on. But again, we still found a way around it. But I'm sure it takes up a ton of data space on your side. But that was something we were like, man, that was crazy how fast that went away.
So I will say, there was a time in our company history, and that's not to say this demo is kind of totally away, where we essentially rewrote a significant part of the underlying code base inside of the tool. We obviously would pair that with some of a user interface refresh. So the experience that you had when you signed up around the embedded videos, that is not a kind of typical one. And now I secretly think, did you invite me on just to pressure me to put embedded videos back into the account? I don't.
Well, I brought you. Yeah, we wanted to bring you on because we wanted to pressure you about timesheets too. So that's my. If we're on the wish list side, that's my side.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, so the concept of going into a trial and all of a sudden feeling like something has changed in your existing experience. I think the world in which we rewrote the core of the existing application, we've kind of passed those milestones. And so you've probably seen a lot net new things, we see the progress report and the My Work page, Zapier coming out. You're going to see a lot more just totally net new things or optimizations that come out. So certainly I can relay that message about the embedded videos to the team. And 9 times out of 10, it's the most complicated thing I never would have thought about. Like, oh, embedded videos, that sounds simple. Oh no, you have to change, something very serious to do that. But there is that 1 out of 10 cases where it's a simple fix that we might be able to queue up. It's unlikely, but now that I know it's if you're Jamie JetPack, I want to, I want to help you out. And so, look, and then conceptually as a company, like you said, we're investing heavily in the product. I want to double down on those investments. I want to even invest more if it's all possible. So as the feedback comes in, let me know. If people want to start a trial, jetpackworkflow.com, you can go check it out. 14-day free trial comes with every feature. We don't limit anything during your trial. You can have a one-on-one demo. You can have one-on-one call. You can chat it up with support. We have webinars and trainings and content. It really is just, I will say, if you're pressed for time, the demo call is probably the quickest way to assess the tool. If you like to go in and tinker, then start a free trial.
Awesome. Well, no, I definitely appreciate having you on the show. And obviously the embedded videos is not why I brought you on, because there's a lot of things that JetPack does well. And we didn't move on once that went away. But appreciate you having you on the show, and you had some great answers. And I think our listeners will really get a lot out of this podcast. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Enjoy this episode? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving modern CPA firm success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.